Question 6. What working classes existed before the Industrial Revolution? Answer. The working classes, depending on the different stages of social development, lived in different conditions and occupied different positions in relation to the propertied and ruling classes. In ancient times, the workers were slaves to their masters, as they are still slaves today in many backward countries and even in the southern United States. In the Middle Ages, they were serfs of noble landowners, which they remain to this day in Hungary, Poland, and Russia. In addition, in the cities in the Middle Ages, until the Industrial Revolution, there were artisan apprentices who worked for petty bourgeois masters, and with the development of manufacture workers gradually began to appear who were now hired by larger capitalists.
Question 7. What is the difference between a proletarian and a slave? Answer. The slave is sold once and for all. The proletarian must sell himself daily and hourly. Each individual slave is the property of a certain master, and as a result of the latter's interest, the slave's existence is ensured, no matter how pathetic it may be. The individual proletarian is, so to speak, the property of the entire bourgeois class. His labor is bought only when someone needs it, and therefore his existence is not assured. This existence is guaranteed only to the proletarian class as a whole. A slave stands outside competition. The proletarian stands in competition. A slave is considered a thing, not a member of civil society. The proletarian is recognized as a person, a member of civil society. Consequently, a slave may have a more tolerable existence than a proletarian, but the proletarian belongs to a society at a higher stage of development, and he himself stands at a higher stage than a slave. A slave emancipates himself by destroying only one relation of slavery out of all the relations of private property, and thereby only becomes a proletarian. The proletarian can liberate himself only by destroying private property in general. The 8th question. What is the difference between a proletarian and a serf? Answer. A serf owns and uses an instrument of production, a piece of land, and for this he gives away part of his income or performs a number of jobs. The proletarian, on the other hand, works with the instruments of production belonging to another and performs work for the benefit of this other, receiving in return a portion of the income. The serf gives, they give to the proletariat. The existence of the serf is assured, the existence of the proletarian is not. The serf stands outside competition, the proletarian stands in competition. A serf frees himself either by running away to the city and becoming an artisan there, or by delivering money to his landowner instead of work or food, becoming a free tenant, or by driving away his feudal lord, becoming an owner himself. In short, he liberates himself by somehow joining the ranks of the property-owning class and entering the sphere of competition. The proletarian liberates himself by destroying competition, private property, and all class distinctions. Question 9. What is the difference between a proletarian and a craftsman? Further, Engels has a gap in the manuscript, which he left to answer the 9th question.
Question 10. What is the difference between a proletarian and a manufacture worker? The manufacture worker of the 16th and 18th centuries almost everywhere also owned the tools of production, his loom, a spinning wheel for his family, and a small plot of land that he cultivated in his spare hours. The proletarian has none of this. The manufacture worker almost always lives in the country and is in a more or less patriarchal relationship with his landowner or employer. The proletarian mostly lives in big cities and has a purely monetary relationship with his employer. Large industry tears the manufacture worker out of his patriarchal conditions. He loses the last property he still possessed, and only then does this transform him into a proletarian. Question 11. What were the immediate consequences of the Industrial Revolution and the division of society into bourgeois and proletarians? Firstly, due to the fact that machine labor increasingly lowered the prices of industrial products, in all countries of the world, the former system of manufacture or industry based on hand labor was completely destroyed. All the semi-barbaric countries that hitherto remained more or less alien to historical development, and whose industry had hitherto remained on manufacture, were forcibly torn from their state of isolation. They began to buy cheaper goods from the British and doomed their own manufacture workers. Thus, countries that have not seen progress for thousands of years, such as China, have undergone a complete revolution, and even China is currently heading towards revolution. It got to the point that the new machine that is being invented in England today deprives millions of workers in China of bread in 1 year. Thus, large industry has connected all the peoples of the earth, united all the small local markets into a world market, prepared the ground for civilization and progress everywhere, and led to the fact that everything that happens in civilized countries should have an impact on all the other countries. So if the workers in England or France are now emancipating themselves, then in all the other countries this should trigger revolutions, which sooner or later will also lead to the emancipation of the workers there. Secondly, wherever large industry replaced manufacture, the Industrial Revolution enormously increased the wealth and power of the bourgeoisie and made it the first class in the country. The result of this was that wherever such a process took place, the bourgeoisie gained political power and displaced the classes that had previously dominated, the aristocracy, the guild burghers, and representing both, the absolute monarchy. The bourgeoisie destroyed the power of the aristocracy, the nobility, by abolishing the entail, or inalienable right to land, and abolishing all noble privileges.
She crushed the power of the guild burghers, abolishing all guilds and all the privileges of artisans. In place of both, she put free competition, that is, a state of society in which everyone has the right to engage in any branch of industrial activity, and nothing can prevent him from doing so except the lack of the necessary capital for this. The introduction of free competition is thus tantamount to an open statement that from now on, the members of society are not equal to each other only insofar as their capitals are not equal. That capital becomes the decisive force, and bourgeois capitalists thereby become the first class in society. But free competition is necessary for the initial period of the development of large-scale industry because it represents the only state of society in which large-scale industry can grow. By thus destroying the social power of the nobility and the guildsburghers, the bourgeoisie also destroyed their political power. Having become the first class in society, she proclaimed herself the first class in the political field. She did this by introducing a representative system based on bourgeois equality before the law and the legislative recognition of free competition. This system was introduced in European countries in the form of a constitutional monarchy. In constitutional monarchies, the rights of voters are enjoyed only by those who have a certain amount of capital, that is, only by the bourgeoisie. These bourgeois voters elect deputies, and these bourgeois deputies, using the right to refuse taxes, elect a bourgeois government. Thirdly, the Industrial Revolution everywhere contributed to the development of the proletariat as much as to the development of the bourgeoisie. The richer the bourgeoisie became, the more numerous the proletarians became. Since only capital can provide work for the proletarians, and capital increases only when it employs labor, the growth of the proletariat occurs in exact accordance with the growth of capital. At the same time, the Industrial Revolution gathers the bourgeoisie and the proletariat into big cities where it is most profitable to develop industry, and by gathering huge masses in one place, inspires the proletarians with a consciousness of their strength. Then, as the Industrial Revolution develops, as new machines are further invented to replace manual labor, large-scale industry puts increasing pressure on wages and reduces them, as we have already said, to a minimum, as a result of which the situation of the proletariat becomes more and more unbearable. Thus, on the one hand, as a result of the growing discontent of the proletariat, and on the other, as a result of the growth of its power, the Industrial Revolution prepares the social revolution that the proletariat will produce. Question 12. What were the further consequences of the Industrial Revolution? Answer.
Large-scale industry has created, in the form of steam and other machines, the means to increase industrial production indefinitely in a short time and at low cost. Due to this ease of expansion of production, free competition, which is a necessary consequence of this large-scale industry, soon became extremely acute. The mass of capitalists rushed into industry, and very soon more was produced than could be consumed. As a result, the manufactured goods could not be sold, and the trade crisis ensued. The factories had to stop, the manufacturers went bankrupt, and the workers lost their bread, and there was terrible poverty everywhere. After some time, the excess products were sold, the factories started working again, wages rose, and gradually things went better than ever, but not for long because soon too many goods were produced again and a new crisis began, proceeding exactly as the previous one. Thus, since the beginning of this century, the industrial situation has constantly been fluctuating between periods of prosperity and periods of crisis, and almost regularly every 5 or 7 years such a crisis has occurred, and each time it has caused the greatest disasters among the workers, general revolutionary excitement, and the greatest danger for the entire existing system. The question 13. What follows from these recurring trade crises? Answer. First, that although large-scale industry itself created free competition in the first epoch of its development, it has now outgrown free competition, that competition and in general the conduct of industrial production by individuals have become fetters for large-scale industry, which it must and will break. That large-scale industry, while it is being conducted in current conditions, it cannot exist without leading to a general disorder which repeats every 7 years, and each time this puts the entire civilization in danger and not only throws the proletarians to the bottom of poverty, but also ruins many bourgeoisie, which means that it is necessary either to abandon large-scale industry, which is absolutely impossible, or to recognize that it makes it absolutely necessary to create an entirely new social order in which the management of industrial production is carried out not by individual competing manufacturers, but by the whole society according to a firm plan and accordingly the needs of all members of society. Secondly, that large-scale industry and the resulting possibility of endless expansion of production make it possible to create a social system in which so many of the necessities of life will be produced that every member of society will be able to freely develop and apply all their strengths and abilities. So it is precisely this property of large-scale industry which in modern society generates all poverty and all trade crises that will appear in another social organization as precisely this property that will destroy this poverty and these calamitous fluctuations. Thus, it has been quite convincingly proven, firstly, that at present all these disasters are explained only by the social system which no longer corresponds to the conditions of the time. Secondly, the means are already available to finally eliminate these disasters by creating a new social order.